presidential race despite a stinging defeat this weekend in her home state of South Carolina.
Meanwhile, former President Trump's campaign says it's full steam ahead, already looking forward to the general election. Fox's Alexandria Hoff with the very latest.
Well, both campaigns, they moved on quickly from South Carolina, but the road really only becomes more difficult for Nikki Haley from here. There are several more winner-take-all states, meaning that the former president is likely to rack up additional delegates quickly. Looking at the divide, Trump earned roughly 60% of the vote. 40% went to former Governor Haley. Former president really did have a strong showing in rural and suburban communities. He took the stage within minutes of the polls closing. The race was called almost immediately. There had been little to no suspense inside of his election headquarters. A lot of confidence there. Trump spoke to the victories he predicts ahead.
You know, Michigan's coming up. We're doing great. The auto workers are going to be with us 100%. Because they got sold out by this country. But Michigan's up, and we're going to have a tremendous success there. And then we have a thing called Super Tuesday.
Haley took to the mic about an hour and a half after polls closed, congratulating former President Trump. She is already in Michigan, saying her supporters who came out in South Carolina and beyond deserve a voice.
I know 40% is not 50%. But I also know 40% is not some tiny group. They have the right to a real choice. Not a Soviet-style election with only one candidate. And I have a duty to give them that choice.
So Haley is sticking in it. She has argued throughout her campaign that polls show she has a better chance than Trump at beating President Biden in November. The Trump campaign predicts that by mid-next month, the former president will have earned enough delegates to secure him the nomination. In Columbia, South Carolina, Alexandria Hoff, Fox News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday said that 31,000 of his country's soldiers had been killed since Russia's full-scale invasion 2 years ago. It was the first official tally of Ukraine's troop casualties in more than a year. At the end of 2022, a presidential aide reported that 13,000 Ukrainian soldiers had been killed. Zelensky's tally differs sharply from what the New York Times reported in August, when it cited U.S. officials as saying that close to 70,000 Ukrainian soldiers had been killed. The same report said that as many as 120,000 Russian troops had died during the war. Zelensky on Sunday told reporters that 180,000 Russians had been killed in the fighting. Russia does not disclose military losses, which it regards as a secret. Both sides regularly describe the other's military losses as vast. Battlefield casualties are a highly sensitive subject in Ukraine, which is trying to reform how it mobilizes civilians to join its armed forces after last year's counteroffensive failed to break through Russian lines. Zelensky said that plan had been leaked to Russia. Russian forces will attempt another offensive in late May or summer, Zelensky said, adding that Ukraine has a new plan for a counteroffensive, details of which he could not disclose publicly.
Supreme Court justices are hearing 2 cases regarding what you can see on social media. They're weighing in on how the First Amendment applies to social media companies as they consider 2 cases that could transform how the internet has operated for decades. ABC's Ike Ejake is breaking down what happened in court.
The hearing beginning with the justices considering Florida's law, which makes it illegal for tech companies to ban candidates on the ballot in the state from their social media sites. Florida Solicitor General Henry Whitaker, often likening social media companies to telecommunication companies, argues social media companies are unfairly censoring conservative viewpoints on their sites, and that the platform's portrayal as passive hosts undermines their arguments that their content moderation policies amount to protected speech.
We certainly agree that a newspaper, a book, and a bookstore is engaging in inherently expressive conduct. And our whole point is that these social media platforms are not like those. And
but doesn't it depend on exactly what they're doing?
Justice Sonia Sotomayor questioning if the law is overly broad, going on to name a wide range of companies that could be affected, like the digital marketplace Etsy, affecting someone's ability to shop online.
This is so broad. It's covering almost everything.
Justice Amy Coney Barrett echoing her colleagues.
We're talking about the classic social media platforms, but it looks to me like it could cover Uber. It looks to me like it could cover just Google search engines, Amazon Web Service, and all of those things would look very different.
Paul Clement arguing on behalf of NetChoice, a group challenging the Florida law, drawing a clear distinction between a government and a private party engaging in content moderation.
Is it anything more than a euphemism for censorship?
If the government's doing it, then content moderation might be a euphemism for censorship. If a private party is doing it, content moderation is a euphemism for editorial discretion.
A ruling that would force tech companies to have no editorial discretion could affect their business model, which relies on curation to attract advertisers and users. A decision is expected in June. Ika Jachi, ABC News, Washington.
The Albert Einstein College of Medicine will be tuition-free.
How about that? An incredible surprise today for students at Montefiore's Albert Einstein College of Medicine. $1 billion donation will provide all of that free tuition for all of those students.
A lot of mouths just jaw open, can't believe it. The donor, a former professor at Einstein. Her donation will go down in history as one of the biggest charitable donations ever to an educational institution.
Eyewitness News reporter Lauren Glassberg is live in the Morris Park section of the Bronx with today's story. Just incredible, Lauren.
Incredible indeed, Liz and David. So many happy students, so many relieved students here on campus. You know, it is really expensive to become a doctor. $60,000 a year tuition here at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. That does not include room and board and other fees. So the announcement today of free tuition, it's simply transformative.
The Albert Einstein College of Medicine will be tuition-free.
It's a gift that's both surprising and spectacular, a $1 billion donation to be used for tuition for all students going forward at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. And the response today was utter joy. Dr. Ruth Gottesman is a former professor at the medical school and current chair of the board. The money came from her late husband's investment in Berkshire Hathaway, an investment that is now changing lives.
My parents are immigrants, so they worked so hard for so long to, try and put me through college. And I think just for my family as a whole, it'll have such a big impact, and it takes a lot of the pressure off.
Julia Zhang is all smiles today, as is Nick Garvey.
I was taking out, I think, $60K for the tuition and then more for living expenses and rent. So probably altogether, I think I'm saving now like $180,000, and then with interest, probably more to $500,000.
Sean Wu says this takes so much pressure off his family.
My dad, he currently works as an Uber driver, so he doesn't make a lot of money. So this has been a huge impact on my family. Yeah, that's the first thing. I just call my parents, and they're super, super happy about it.
Some students may now consider going into less lucrative fields like internal medicine, and others say it sets them up to pay it forward.
I was thinking, if someone handed me $1 billion, would my first thought be to help medical students who I don't know? It's really inspiring, and it makes me want to give back in the future.
And this $1 billion donation also opens the door for students who are really just too worried about going to medical school because of the financial burdens. This would allow them to pursue their dreams of helping other people.
Biden stopped by Seth Meyers' late night show, and along with aiming some zingers at opponent Donald Trump, he also got a big reaction putting on his trademark sunglasses.
The president got a warm reception when he stopped by Seth Meyers' late night talk show to celebrate the host's 10-year anniversary, along with comedian Amy Poehler. They were Meyers' first ever guest back in 2014, when Biden was the Veep.
We're currently 81 years old.
Who the hell told you that?
Yeah.
The question of his age came up, and he deflected it at Donald Trump.
You got to take a look at the other guy. He's about as old as I am, but he can't remember his wife's name.
Yeah.
He was referring to a moment from a Trump speech on Saturday when he appeared to refer to Melania as Mercedes.
Call up my wife, our great first lady. She was a great first. People loved her.
Wow, Mercedes, that's pretty good.
Turns out he was actually speaking to his communications director, Mercedes Schlapp, off stage. After their interview, Biden and Meyers went out for ice cream. But just as he was about to take a bite, the president was asked a very serious question about the possibility of a ceasefire in Gaza. It made for a jarring contrast.
My hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
That's a big announcement from the president to be given in an ice cream shop.
It was really strange, really strange, asking these important questions, eating ice cream cone.
And what about those conspiracy theories that Taylor Swift is secretly working with the Biden re-election campaign?
Can you confirm or deny that there is an active conspiracy between you and Ms. Swift?
Where are you getting this information? It's classified. But I will tell you, she did endorse me in 2020.
She did. You think it might come around again?
I told you it's classified.
Former President Donald Trump is gearing up for another legal case. His legal team has claimed he cannot be prosecuted for actions he took while in office.
Now the Supreme Court announced it'll take on the case. ABC's M. Nguyen has more.
In a major announcement, the Supreme Court says it will review former President Donald Trump's claim of presidential immunity against criminal prosecution. It's a big win for Trump, facing federal charges brought by special counsel Jack Smith, who accuses the former president of trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election. This case already has seen significant delays.
Under normal circumstances, a case like this probably would be decided at the end of June, but there is definitely precedent for the court moving much faster in a case like this, and here I think the court can and should move more quickly.
After the Supreme Court's announcement, Trump posted on social media, "A president must be free to make proper decisions. His mind must be clear, and he must not be guided by the fear of retribution." The Supreme Court announcement follows a lower court decision denying his appeal, saying former President Trump has become Citizen Trump. Any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution. The Supreme Court now smack in the middle of a highly controversial debate.
They will issue an opinion on a major historical question, and that is whether, and if so, to what extent does a former president enjoy full immunity from criminal prosecution for his duties? It's never been answered before, and it will have enormous stakes on the country.
This news coming just as Trump leaps closer to becoming the Republican presidential nominee. The former president blasting the charges he's facing in multiple cases on the campaign trail.
And the president has to have immunity.
The High Court will hear arguments the week of April 22nd. M. Nguyen, ABC News, Washington.
This hour in Washington, new foreign aid for Ukraine remains uncertain, but there is a new offer on the table from House Speaker Mike Johnson to prevent a partial government shutdown. It comes after a White House meeting yesterday between President Biden and top congressional leaders. Our Scott McFarland is on Capitol Hill with more on this story. Hey, Scott, good morning. What came out of that meeting between President Biden and those congressional leaders? Talk us through that new offer from Speaker Johnson.
A very rare thing. There is some consensus in Congress over this one matter. There's going to be some effort to get an extension of deadlines to keep the government open and prevent a partial shutdown come Friday, 11:59 p.m. Washington time. How that bill comes together is still a bit of a mystery, but it's going to have to happen in the coming hours because it's going to have to pass the House and Senate and be signed by the president in such short order. Here's what our latest reporting shows us. They're likely to push the deadlines that are currently in place. One is Friday, one is next Friday, deeper into March, just to extend the windows to negotiate over all 12 of the federal spending bills. There's not going to be any large-scale changes as part of this effort, just a moving of the goalposts to let the game play on.
Well, the Hamas-run health ministry says more than 100 people were killed and hundreds more hurt in Gaza today while seeking food aid. Israel says there was a stamp on the delivery trucks. Soldiers responded by shooting. This comes as the World Health Organization says the population there is facing crisis levels of hunger. Rena Roy has our coverage tonight.
Chaotic scenes inside this hospital in Gaza after Israeli forces opened fire on Palestinians who were trying to get food being delivered on trucks. This man saying what is happening to us is unjust and unfair. We are people who just want to live and eat. More than 100 people were killed in the crowd and more than 700 wounded, according to the Gaza-run health ministry. Israeli security officials releasing this surveillance video they say shows a stampede. Palestinians swarming the vehicles, saying some were jumping on the trucks.
At some point, the trucks were overwhelmed, and the people driving the trucks, which were Gazan civilian drivers, plowed into the crowds of people.
The IDF initially said the crowd approached forces in a manner that posed a threat to troops, saying they first fired into the air before opening fire at the group of people approaching. But now a spokesperson insisting they fired warning shots near the crowd and did not shoot at people seeking aid. This incident highlighting the desperation for food in Gaza. Hundreds of Palestinians keeping warm by fires in the streets Thursday night as they wait for more aid trucks. This doctor saying we're suffering from famine and children are dying. The World Health Organization says 93% of the population is facing crisis levels of hunger. A U.S. official telling ABC News the Biden administration is considering airdropping aid into Gaza.
Getting more humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza and making sure humanitarian workers can safely deliver it, as we saw today, is really a matter of life and death.
President Biden has been discussing ceasefire efforts with foreign leaders who are in agreement that Hamas should release the Israeli hostages in exchange for an immediate 6-week ceasefire, though Biden did tell reporters this incident could delay negotiations. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
And aid groups say it's become nearly impossible to deliver supplies to Gaza because of difficulty coordinating with the Israeli military and crowds of desperate people overwhelming aid convoys.
President Biden and former President Trump visited the southern border, and it wasn't just their location that was miles apart. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes.
And I'm Steve Eager. It's 9 o'clock. Trump toured state-led border security efforts that have ramped up in recent months. Meanwhile, President Biden tried to put pressure on Congress to act. Fox 4's Blake Hansen in studio with more on the visits. Blake.
Stephen, Heather, polls show immigration is a growing issue for voters and not just Republicans. And while the president used the trip to try and push Congress toward a solution, Republican officials lay the blame with the executive. Both men who seek to lead America for a second term toured the border Thursday with starkly different backdrops and messages aimed at fixing the crisis. Former President Trump joined Governor Abbott in Eagle Pass. There, the Texas National Guard and Texas DPS have nudged out the federal government, rolling out razor wire, buoys, and other hardened infrastructure that's led to court battles with the Biden administration.
The operation that they showed me is nothing less than incredible. And I'll say this, it's a military operation. I mean, we have this is like a war. It's a military operation.
Trump and Abbott also called out President Biden, saying his visit was obligatory.
He's in some sanitized location in the Brownsville area, not seeing the razor wire that Texas has put up around Brownsville.
Roughly 325 miles away, Mr. Biden was flanked not by state authorities, but by federal Border Patrol agents. He called on Congress to pass bipartisan legislation to boost Border Patrol resources and add immigration judges to tackle the backlog.
Folks, I didn't get everything I wanted in that compromised bipartisan bill, but neither did anybody else. Compromise is part of the process.
But the bipartisan legislation has stalled in Congress after Trump urged Republicans to reject the deal. President Biden spoke directly to his rival on that.
So here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with this issue, instead of telling members of Congress to block this legislation, join me, or I'll join you in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill.
Texas officials have argued President Biden could act without congressional approval to toughen policies at the border.
This is a Joe Biden invasion. This is a Biden invasion over the past 3 years.
Well, Trump did not discuss it during this visit. He has laid out new immigration proposals, even the idea of ideological screenings for migrants, as well as an expansion of his travel ban.